can be that way. It can be that way relentlessly until people burn out. But I think there's probably a case of only if you let it.
Yeah.
But also, some suckers for punishment just love to live that way and want to live that way until it's too late. So,
Can I ask you, mate, up until let's say this year, were you a sucker for punishment? Is this a new realization, or you've always thought about the sustainability aspect?
no, I would say early on when I was in the first couple of roles, you definitely you want to do the best possible job, where you are to your own detriment sometimes, or I did anyway. I know some of those early roles I'd kind of work myself to the point of exhaustion and illness, and you'd kind of there'd be a down week, and you'd use that week to sort of recharge, and then you get straight back on to burying yourself in a big deep hole again, and so you realize that that's not something that's sustainable, but it is something that I probably challenge myself now when we're building new environments to not to try not to create an environment or allow an environment that has this invisible expectation of new staff or young staff to feel like they have to do that.
Mm.
Because you can say all the right things and say, don't burn yourself out, but if the environment that you're creating invisibly sort of demands it, then people who are inexperienced or people who are a bit younger then can feel that invisible pull, and kind of have to do it that way. So I've been able to look at a lot of different environments over the years and been involved in, when in Japan where there's don't go home before the boss sort of scenario, and the work ethic or the variation of work ethic that sort of exists in culture in Japan, and then just in different environments I've sort of been in where it's a lot different, and people sort of see it as a job and just sign on and sign off, but you start to wonder whether they really care, and there's a balance somewhere in between the two, and it's about trying to find that balance.
Tempering almost passion and your own wellness is a tough battle when you're doing something that you love, huh? At that level.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that's completely different to somebody who does a job that they hate and they burn out because they're just working for the weekend and trying to clock in and clock out and just earn the money to do something that they love rather than doing what they love and their passion as a role. And so, if you do that, you don't really ever feel like you're working. But it's easy to then do nothing else because your work is your passion and your passion is your work, and what
Yeah.
else would you do with your downtime other than your passion? So
Yeah.
it becomes that relentless sort of cycle of doing work in your downtime because you enjoy it,
If I,
and so
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's interesting.
If we had to organise this podcast 6, 7 years ago, let's say after your first year at the Crusaders, would have you had a similar mentality on this, or at that stage you were just like, "Holy cow, I'm with the best rugby. I'm going to say the best rugby team in the world." At that stage, you certainly would have come into the conversation. I'm with the best rugby team in the world. I'm just going to eat, sleep, dream this all the time. Or even at that stage, 6, 7 years ago, were you aware of, well, I love this and this is my passion and I'm in an amazing organization under a great coach with incredible athletes. But hang on, in order for me to maintain my capacity to be my best, I need to understand my limits, which I can expand and overreach a little bit, but I can't do it all the time.
Yeah, I think by that point I was starting to get there to that realization. I think because it had sort of those years through the working with the academy and the NPC years and like the paying your dues kind of years early where you sort of you're potentially sort of overdoing a bit, to be fair, and then you start to realize like there's so much that you can do to be effective, and then over and above that, are you just doing more ineffectively?
Mm,
And how you and I mean it's always a privilege to be involved with a group like that where you can actually sort of step back and maximize. Like if I've worked with groups where you're trying to instill professionalism and educate a whole lot more and put in all the foundations and all the groundwork within an environment and a culture, it's quite different to when you're in a place that's really established and the players are world class. Like you could do a great job or an okay job and they'd probably still win. If you did a poor job, you might impact the outcome of the team to a greater degree for them, losing if you injure everybody or you don't quite get them in the right space at the right time. But it's such a great environment that has great principles in place that um, the coaches, the players, it determines a lot of the success as well. So you're a part of something that's operating at a very high level, and so you can just do your part really well, but you don't have to do all of the parts, and you can actually just execute in your role and support others. So you're not quite stretched as thin, therefore you don't bury yourself into as big a hole. And I'd probably learned through being able to juggle that with, you finish a Super Rugby campaign, then you go away to work with a national team, or you go on tour, and then you finish that on tour. And I was used to being busy all year, and all of a sudden you get this bit of time and space. And we're like, oh, there's some consulting in Japan. Well, I'll learn from that. I'll grow from it. I'll be able to contribute. It's a little bit more pay as well. So you take those opportunities. But then I probably spent those years filling all of my downtime with other opportunities to either get into a different environment, learn, grow, contribute, whatever it might be. And so then you start to realize that you do have this other time that you can put to other things. It's just you put it to more work in other environments, or you put it into other things. So I was probably starting to, as we went through that sort of process of 2017, 18, 19, and then 20 was sort of COVID interrupted and a little bit different. But I'd say I got to that point and it just sort of re-signed for a couple more years at Crusaders. But then the opportunity in the US came up, and that was get right out of comfort zone, go and break up my year a little bit differently. The MLRs, there's lower stress and lower pressure and lower expectation in terms of global views of who's watching, whether people are successful or not and teams are successful or not. But there was a lot of work to do in setting up something that's sort of trying to go from semi-professional to professional, or from a minor league to a major league, or however you want to see it. So that experience probably opened my eyes to want to step out of that environment that was so good, and I really felt at home there at Crusaders. I'd grown up watching the team and ended up sort of working with the side and being involved and enjoying a lot of success alongside some great people, and could have just continued to do that. In a way, and it's good. You step away, and I think that's where I got a good feeling of like, you kind of know you're doing an okay job if the team that you're working for is winning, however you define winning, whether it's winning a championship or they just get better every day or every week compared to how they were before as individuals or a team. But then also you probably got a really good measure when you leave. Does it keep getting better? Does it get worse? Is there a lot of other people who have been around you ready to step up and take over and lead in their roles? And so I think that's a great measure of a person within a performance environment. If you can happily step away and know that things are going to go better without you, and others are going to go better without you because you've empowered them and they're prepared, and people can just take over and roll with it, and the success continues. Or when I'd left Tasman, we'd been building and building for a few years, but not yet achieved success. And you move on, and that team continues to get better and better, and then they become successful. And either you look at it as you contributed to that journey and you played a little bit of a part in it, or you left and they won.
Let's go the former.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's so it was probably just the things that were in my mind when I sort of made that choice to move on, is just throughout that period it's sort of refined that there's other things outside just working with a team that's winning all the time that you can measure success on, and measure how happy you are with your work and things like that. The journey across 3 sort of Super Rugby titles in a row was interesting in itself.